Hey folks, hope you guys are having a good Wednesday. Welcome to NewPub Talk. I don't actually know what I'm going to talk about today. Halloween, other fun things, we'll find out. The events of the week. Publishing, I always talk about publishing. It's a good topic. It's a topic of a thing I do, which is publish books. What's the newest book? I think it's still Sorcerer's Blood, which I wrote live. There you go. That's the newest book. I'll link it. Oh, there's a cat. You have died of dysentery and velociraptors. Hi, cat. Are you going to sit there like a good cat, or are you going to make trouble? I should know the answer to that by now. Trouble? Alright. Newest book. People haven't bought this one a lot, partly because I haven't promoted it. I think it has like a whopping 4 ratings, which is really low. Really, really low for one of my books, but I'll link it anyway. I wrote it live, so a lot of my, I guess, deeper fan base got the book for free as part of my Patreon. And on Substack, or watched me write it live, and so they got the story by just watching it go onto the page live. But anyway, you can buy it. It's a 99-cent book, which is pretty cool. $5.99 for the paperback, actually, but the ebook is 99 cents. It's a 99-cent book, so you can grab that. That's a great way to support me, and you'll have fun reading it. It's a good short novella. Good novella for if you like fantasy and kind of dark fantasy, then you'll probably like that. Some good little twists. Have you checked out Metaphor, the new Atlas game? I have not. I'm always interested in Atlas games though, because it's pretty consistent quality, and I really generally like the art styles that they use. So I'll check it out. I was playing some Dragon's Crown the other week, which is a fun little multiplayer beat 'em up with a great art style. If you want like classic, if you want a more anime, slightly anime take on like a caricature-like approach to 80s fantasy, then Dragon's Crown. Dragon's Crown is it. You can get Dragon's Crown Pro on the PS4 or PS5. I even have it on the PS Vita. I have the original, but it's good. That's a Vanillaware game, but it's also put out by Atlas. I get first question. I need David to acknowledge that Far Cry 5 is the best video game soundtrack of all time, ahead of Skyrim. I haven't played Far Cry 5, so I actually don't know that. Should I let this cat stay, or should she go? She can stay for a little bit. She can stay for a bit. She just wants to sit in the lap and get pets, and she's very cute. So I really can't weigh in on that, because the last Far Cry game I played was Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon. Far Cry 4, I think I have Far Cry 4, and I just didn't really care. I don't think I played it at all. Far Cry 2 I thought was pretty good, but it's basically the same crap since Far Cry 3. It's the same kind of thing over and over again. And I just don't feel like there's much depth to it. So I'm not a huge Far Cry fan. So I don't know. Now, as ahead of Skyrim, I have to acknowledge that Skyrim has an amazing soundtrack. I don't know if it's my favorite of the Elder Scrolls soundtracks or my favorite Jeremy Soule soundtrack. I think Oblivion is more favorite, but Skyrim is longer and has all the same diversity and the same kind of moods, so it probably wins as far as soundtrack goes. And I was thinking about this, right? Like, is Skyrim good because the soundtrack is good, or do we think the soundtrack is good because Skyrim is good? And I actually think it's a little bit of both. Yeah. Go play. So I think the Skyrim soundtrack does elevate Skyrim. It does elevate the game. It's there for the same reason that like a a John Williams score is going to elevate a movie that it's in. But that goes both ways, right? We are attached to the music because the game was so fun and the game offered so much depth, especially for the time it was released. I think it still offers a lot of depth. That the Skyrim soundtrack ends up feeling like the best. It's the one we like to hear because there's a nostalgic feeling associated with it. Kind of like how if you put on an album you listened to when you were 16, you're probably going to really enjoy that album because you're going to remember what it was like to be 16 when you first heard it. Like, I feel that way about a couple of albums, Rust in Peace and Justice for All by Metallica, or by Megadeth and Metallica respectively. Those albums, were albums I listened to when I was in high school, and they blew me away, and I could still listen to them now and acknowledge what's really good about them. But I also remember how crazy it was to put those albums on and have never heard anything like that before, and to hear it. Same thing with Rain in Blood by Slayer. What are some other ones, right? Vile by Cannibal Corpse. We just never heard anything like that when we heard it. It's whoa, this is crazy. I think I'm thinking of Vile. What were some other ones that are like that? I mean, I can go back and listen to Color in the Shape by Foo Fighters. It's a rock album. But I remember it when I was 14 or whatever. And it was a good album. And I listen to it now and I feel like there's some tracks that aren't great. But the tracks that are good really hold up. But you have that little bit of extra attachment to it, So I think it goes both ways with Skyrim soundtrack, is that it's a really good soundtrack and it helps the game and it creates a lot of the moods that people get attached to in the game. But at the same time, because the game was really good, you're also going to have a really strong attachment to the soundtrack for that game. Now, here's the way I play Elder Scrolls games. So if I'm playing Morrowind, I have the soundtracks for all the games in Morrowind. Morrowind's soundtrack is good, but it's just too short. So I have all of them. So they're all in there. And I've even, I don't know if I have it set up now, but you can even do it where you can get the ESO, the Elder Scrolls Online soundtracks, and put that into your music folder for Morrowind, and you can hear just an endless amount of music. The ESO soundtracks are good. They're very inspired by Jeremy Soule, but not quite as good. There's a little something missing. They're good composers, and they have their own style, and so they're putting their own fingerprint on it. But it's missing the ambient feeling that comes from a Jeremy Soule track. Jeremy Soule, his music has this reflective, kind of relaxed, disengaged feeling because he just doesn't overdo things. His orchestration's fairly simple. He uses maybe one featured instrument at a time, very minimal movement in the background, maybe two voices that have some interest, and it's more about just producing the texture, the sound of the orchestration that he chooses, and then letting the track fade away in a lot of cases. So if you hear something like Sunrise of Flutes, there's going to be a harp and a flute, right? And then maybe a clarinet, one at a time, and then the strings are just kind of in the background, providing a little harmonic backing. They're not doing that much, but it's just about that mood. We used to call them aphorisms. It's very aphorismic. An aphorism would be something that's just a short statement. So I wrote a bunch of pieces that were 1 minute long, a whole bunch. I wrote a whole suite of piano stuff. I think I did 2 suites of 10 movements each, and each one was about 1 to 2 minutes. So each piece of 10, so there's 20 aphorisms. They were about, roughly 28 minutes of music, putting all of those together. And I love that because rather than having to worry about a lot of formal organization, you could keep it really simple. The melody, maybe a repeat, maybe a variation, maybe just a motif with a couple variations, and then you leave. You're done. You don't need to do a really big job of complex organization like you would do with a symphony, where what we call the formal organization is very complex, where you have, we can go into symphony form and analysis I love talking about that stuff. It's probably pretty boring for most people, but the reason symphonies get long is because the formal organization across 4 movements can be pretty complex. So if you look at the first movement of most symphonies, it's in what's called the sonata allegro form, which will have an A section, which is a melody, a B section, which is something that contrasts with that, a melody section that contrasts with that. Then you'll go back to the A section and the B section, so it's A, B, A, B. So you're hearing 2 themes twice, so that gives you like 4 periods of music. We call periods. Because each A section could be several phrases, maybe 4 phrases or 2 phrases. So you're getting 8 to, 4 periods of music with 16, 32 phrases, whatever. Then you're going to have a development section, which is where you take the ideas from both of those and you start changing them and playing with them. And you maybe take a section of the melody and you'll use it as a motif, and you'll do a bunch of little modulations. You'll go up, 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 digga-da, 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 right? And then you'll do something like that. Maybe you'll do a fugue in there. Mozart would do all kinds of things. Beethoven would do really wild things in the development section. It's your chance to go hog wild. You could have instrument solos. You can have things in different instrumentations. You could do things in minor keys, in inversions, where instead of going da 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 da, it's da 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 da. That's an inversion, okay? So you do all these sorts of things, and then you come back and do A and B again. So your sonata allegro movement could be quite long. Beethoven would do ones that were 10 or 15 minutes long for a first movement, and then you still have 3 more movements. And then the overall formal organization of a sonata, which is the same as a symphony. So a sonata would be maybe for piano or an instrumentation that's not a symphony orchestra. Symphony's sonata for orchestra. So the second movement of a sonata is a slow, an adagio movement. So you'll have an adagio, a slow movement, and so that's your chance to really be emotional and slow. Maybe you put it in a minor key. So if your movement 1 is in C major, your movement 2, you maybe put it in A minor. The third movement is usually a dance. Now, it changes from the mid-18th century into the 19th century with being a little more loose with that third movement to be sometimes what's called a scherzo, which is really too fast to dance, because a dance would be bop, bop, bop. Usually it's in 3, so you might have your first movement in 4/4, your second movement, your adagio, might be in 4/4 or 3/4, doesn't matter, and then that scherzo would be in a 3 meter, 3/8 or 3/4, da, 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 where something is in triplet meter of some kind. And that would be your third movement, be something that is just a little change up, something that has a little bit of motion to it for a dance. And then your fourth movement is sonata allegro again. So the overall form is fast, slow, dance, fast. And so your fourth movement, you're pulling everything together and you're going to have another big one. So when people think of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, they're almost always thinking of the fourth movement. When they think of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, they're almost always thinking of the first movement. Da-da-da-dum, right? When people are thinking of Beethoven's Sixth Symphony, they're usually, that one has 5 movements, if I remember correctly, right? Beethoven would be like, I'm going to do 5 movements. And then in the Ninth Symphony, I'm going to have a choir. I'm going to add a choir. He was really pushing boundaries at the time in the early 19th century. So when people are thinking of the Sixth Symphony, the pastoral, right? They are usually thinking of the first movement, or they're thinking of, like from Fantasia, this kind of fourth movement before there's another like slower fifth movement. It's pretty cool. Anyway. So yeah, the reason Jeremy Soule is so good is that he doesn't do symphonies. And that's probably why he was unable to compose a symphony, is that it's simply not outside of his skill level. I think he's very skilled, but it just wasn't, it wasn't doing what his soundtrack music does. If we look at the Skyrim soundtrack and you look at the lengths of the pieces, they're all pretty short. They're all short pieces. That's what you want, because somebody's moving through a game, they're exploring, they hear a couple of different moods, then an enemy attacks and the music switches away. A lot of people are not aware of how short the music is. The music will switch away to combat music. There's some kind of combat music. something a little more epic sounding, I guess. And then when that quits, you go to another explore piece, and it kind of keeps everything kind of flowing in one kind of mush. And his style really lends itself well to that approach to music. Other composer styles, I think they're great in ESO. They just don't hit as good as Jeremy Soul's music because they are more formally organized, I guess. They're more organized like traditional symphonic classical music pieces. They're great. The ESO soundtrack is an amazing soundtrack for like every expansion and stuff. They're really good pieces to listen to. They don't hit like Jeremy Soul because I think the formal organization is too present, maybe. But Jeremy's music, because it's very ambient and kind of reflective and aphorismic, it just kind of pieces flow into each other really well. It's more about the sound of the harp, the little bum bum ba ba bum bum ba ba bum bum ba ba bum. Just hearing that short melody in a couple of different variations before you move on to something else, that's enough to give it like a really good feeling, that nostalgic feeling, and then you move on to something else in the game. So yeah, I mean that could be on the list. I talked about it last time. It's like maybe I should write a electronic symphony, a symphony for guitar and VST instruments, and do it, like really do it. I don't know of too many other people who've done it. There's been alternate instrumentation symphonies. I've participated in them with the LA Philharmonic, Glenn Branca stuff, things like that, where I played bass guitar. I played bass guitar with the LA Philharmonic, right? Really cool stuff. Like, people have pushed boundaries, but they haven't like really said, well, I'm going to do something that's very much like Beethoven, or maybe we're going to do a newer one, Dvorak, or Rimsky-Korsakov, or Stravinsky, but I'm going to do it with this instrumentation that I have in my home studio. So maybe that's something that's like on the list of something to do. I think that would be a really fun project. I think I'd have a lot of fun doing that. Because once you understand the formal organization, and I didn't talk about the formal organization of the sub-pieces, like adagios tend to be what's called a rondo form. A rondo form is a great way you can take a small amount of material and really extend it and make it long, right? But I mean, my Zool channel, did I link my Patreon? I don't know if I did or not. Come on, David, you're being bad at this. No, I forgot to link the Substack. Hey, subscribe to the Substack. I love writing articles on Substack. I come up with one every week. Last week's was on Brian Johnson, a really fascinating guy that I just love. I like his content, and I love to talk about him. I think he's super interesting, and his perspective is interesting. For the video version, people thought I was being more critical, I think, than I was. I might do a follow-up called The Difference Between Average and Maximum Life Expectancy. Because I think even Brian may be misunderstanding this. It's very easy to misunderstand that. We have a hard limit of 120 years. People don't live past 120. Everything goes right, you're still dying at 120. So how can medicine push you past that? You're going to have to like repair molecules. It's going to be... Because the human organism is a complex organism. Not just complicated, but complex. You don't know how you're going to upset the balance. It's a delicate balance. Like, oh, we're going to repair this DNA, and maybe it gives them cancer, right? Oh, we're going to do this gene therapy that's going to fix this aging, and then the person turns into a corpus monster. You've invented corpus disease. You don't know what, you're playing God with a system that's more complex than you understand. Like, we don't understand the complexity of the human body. We don't understand what the human mind even is, nor how the brain works. Those things are still very mysterious, and a lot of medication, we don't really know how it works. We just know the result of it. If you look at most psychiatric medication, like the entire idea of the mechanisms for how it works has been kind of upended. It's like, well, antidepressants work, but we're not sure why, because this whole hypothesis about serotonin being dysregulated just wasn't true, I guess. And nor do you get people prescribed SSRIs because they had serotonin levels measured in their brain. You get told that, oh, this is to correct a chemical imbalance in your brain. It's like, when did they measure the chemicals in your brain? You're like, I don't know. I talked to a psychiatrist and told him I was sad, and he said it must be from a chemical imbalance. It's like, how do you get there, right? How does an interview with a person determine the balance of chemicals in their brain? It can't, right? You have to find some other way to test that. But that's the way we did it. And like, yeah, antidepressants work for some people. For a lot of people, they work, I think. But they don't work for the reasons that hypothetically they were supposed to work, which is really weird. Anyway, rondo form. Rondo form. A, B, A, C, A, D, A. So you just have your A section. Play that. B section, contrasting. A section again. C section, new idea. A section again. D section, another new idea. A section. You can even make it an arc. A, B, A, C, A, B, A. Boom. 3 ideas turns into 6 sections of music, right? A, B, A, C, A, B, A. 7 sections of music, possibly. That A section's got to be really good, and you probably should keep it short because people are going to hear it a lot. There's a lot of famous rondos that Haydn did that, are just exceptional to listen to because he would create such huge contrast between those sections. Yeah. So those are just examples. It's all about how you can take limited numbers of ideas and really extend them. I think talking about this is interesting because I think the way that most people encounter what we think of as classical music today is through movie soundtracks and game soundtracks, like what we're talking about. Not through the original music from the 18th and 19th century that inspires that, right? Once you get past guys like Gustav Holst and like Johann Strauss, you are entering the modern period, even with Stravinsky, and you are leaving behind the things that people really like to hear. So it's no accident that most game soundtracks are, Jeremy Soul's music I would describe as impressionistic. It's very like Debussy. That's a huge compliment because I love Debussy's music, and Jeremy Soule is able to take Debussy's feeling and approach to music and adapt it to his style and done some incredible music with it, right? So maybe up through Debussy, right? We call that the common practice period. After that, you start to get 12-tone stuff, serial music, like all of these weird things that people don't really like to listen to. The vast majority of people, 99% of people, do not like atonal music, and they never will. It sounds awful to them, and it probably always will. So yeah, go back and listen. You can do it on YouTube now. I mean, YouTube is such a great resource because you can just find performances of all this stuff that was just so hard to find 20 years ago. You know how hard it was? Like for me to go listen to a symphony. I wanted to go listen to, let's say I wanted to go listen to some Brahms or something. I'd have to go to the library and get a vinyl from like 1960 and put it in a turntable and put on those big Koss headphones. The Pro 4As is what they had. They were like freaking tanks, man. You could not bust these. They sounded amazing, though. They sound better than most headphones today. If you have Koss 4A headphones, 4AA, they look like giant military camp. They are good. You have to have a really strong headphone amp, like from the 70s, to power them. But that's how we did it. And you'd put it on there, and you'd listen to it, and then you had to put the record back. You couldn't take the record out. It's like you couldn't go down to Best Buy and get a recording. You couldn't go to Borders and get a recording. You might be able to special order a CD. But half the stuff that you wanted to listen to had never made it onto CD. It was pressed on vinyl in the mid-20th century and just never recorded again. I know it seems crazy that it was so hard to get access to the depth of Western traditional music in a recorded form, but it really was around the turn of the century. It was very difficult. The radio stations didn't play it. You just never heard this stuff. There was zero cultural exposure to it unless you went out of your way to get it. Now on YouTube, it's like, hey guys, you know that there's like a top-notch performance of L'Orfeo by Monteverdi. You can go listen to it on YouTube. I watched it with my son, and we were like, he loved it. My kid loves opera because it's a cool story, it's beautiful music, cool costumes. You have a whole thing. It's not just like listening to a vinyl and imagining that there's like a stage. There's a stage performance. You get the whole bit. So it's really cool. YouTube is really cool for that. You can find all kinds of classical music to listen to. Go back and listen to the formal stuff. When I talk about formal organization, when people are listening to movie soundtracks, they are not formally organized the way that real classical music was. They are organized according to cues on the screen, which to me, if I'm listening to them absent those visual things, it's like unnerving almost. It's disorganized. And so it sounds not to my liking. Whereas if you were to take those things for like a pops orchestra and arrange them formally, like what they do with John Williams, it's a little more pleasant to listen to. Right. Sorry, let's take a look at the chat, because I've been ranting here about classical music. Have you heard Michael Giacchino's Medal of Honor or Secret Weapons over Normandy video game soundtracks? Medal of Honor, the first one, yeah. I thought it was good, but I don't really remember it off the top of my head. Like it hasn't like not something that's stuck with me. I refuse to play Skyrim because of the severely diminished role playing. Well, it depends what you mean by role playing. A lot of people, when they think of role playing, they're thinking of the story stuff and not the stats. So yeah, there's fewer stats, but Skyrim does the story stuff pretty good. And there's a lot of fun things to find. Like the Daedric quests are generally pretty good in Skyrim. They're pretty fun. It's not as good as Oblivion. It's not as good as Morrowind as far as the gameplay goes. But there's a lot there. And then you have the atmosphere, especially modded Skyrim. The graphics matter. It really makes you feel like you're exploring a real place, even though it doesn't really look real. You know, it's too small. You know, you kind of let that stuff go because the mood is there and you like the mood. You know. Yeah, so Skyrim VR. I have Skyrim VR. It's good. So it's one of these funny things where we were promised all this stuff with VR. And what delivered it was Skyrim. Skyrim delivered on all the promises of VR by just making the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim into a VR game. Just like a VR mod. That was all it took for people like, this is what VR is supposed to be. I'm exploring another world. I'm talking to people. I can see them in front of me. I can pick things up. Like, especially on the PC, like VR Skyrim is legit and it is fun. Almost too fun. Like you feel too lost in it sometimes. Like, and it's one of these things where I remember playing it and I was just like, I just kind of want to like sit in this inn and like look at people because it looks cool. It's just like, it's just on a different level. It's really fun. It really is fun. It's definitely fulfills that promise of VR that people wanted. And I haven't played any other VR game that really did that well. Maybe Star Wars Squadrons, which is one of the most sickening experiences. But it probably simulates what it's like to be in a starfighter. Because you would have gravity that's always pushing you down, but your visual field, like you have the artificial gravity in the fighter, but your visual field is completely crazy. So that's probably what it feels like to be in a starfighter. It's probably really sickening. Like you're gonna really have to get used to the motion of a starfighter. But that one's good, and the combat in it's really good. It's like X-Wing. You know, when you played X-Wing versus TIE Fighter or something in the 90s, that's what you wish it was. And now you can do that. It's really cool. A big fulfillment on the promise of like simulation type games. I wonder if Bethesda will stick with Jeremy for the Elder Scrolls or puss out because he got canceled. I think they will puss out. That is my guess. I don't think Jeremy's on. There's plenty of other composers that they feel like are good enough. And if you look it up, you know, like a lot of the Me Too stuff that came out. Excuse me, I choked on that a little bit. So if you look it up with Jeremy Soule, a lot of the Me Too stuff that came out, it wasn't. It was just being slightly creepy. It was being inappropriate. It wasn't respecting professional boundaries. Really common. Excuse me. That's very common in the games industry. Very, very common in the arts. It's so common in the arts, it's bad. It's bad. You're going to have teachers sleeping with students all the time. You have directors sleeping with actresses. Like, it's bad. Okay. Respecting professional boundaries is really important to keep everybody safe and happy. But it just doesn't happen a lot. A lot of violations of boundaries. Just being creepy, right? Just being kind of a creepy guy. A little bit manipulative, like a gamma male kind of guy. That's what he's guilty of, right? I swear I can ask Dave anything, he'll give me gold. Good stuff, man. Thank you. I'm one of those who thinks of the great fourth movement of Beethoven's Fifth. Yeah, the fourth movement rocks. I think that's the crazy loud one. Yeah. I think Soul did great work with Kotor. I agree. Very Williams-esque. He took Williams's ideas and themes and did them well. Yeah. Great stuff. Living in the past. Remember this single from 69, Happy, and I'm smiling, walking miles to drink your water, and you know I love you, and above you there's no other. I don't remember that. Why does our DNA get too messed up at 120? Well, like the ends of the DNA get degraded, right? Like there's like end caps on the DNA that get degraded. There's all kinds of things that happen, right? It's a complex system that all the subsystems break down over time. Like the cells stop replicating. You'd have to go in and like reprogram a bunch of things, cytoplasmic factors, things that are so more complex than I can talk about, and we still don't know all of them, right? You'd have to be like repairing individual molecules. That's like what it would have to be to like extend that age past 120. So that's the maximum age, 120. Now, we can get closer to that maximum age, right? And the main way that the average life expectancy is increased, which is not the same as maximum, is by removing the things that kill us early. And so that's the way that you can live a longer life for most people, is to remove the things which kill you early. And so Brian Johnson, he's like right on the money with those things. Don't smoke, little to no alcohol, exercise, low body fat, correct diet. I'm not going to say I necessarily agree with his diet, but he has a whole diet that's built around including lots of the things that your body needs and having everything in like moderation, right? There's fats in the diet. It's not like a no fat diet. It's not a no carb diet. It's got all the stuff. It's a vegetable heavy diet, right? So good diet, sleep, right? Those are things that are going to allow your body to be healthy into old age, as well as to reduce the risk that something's going to kill you early. So that's the way average life expectancy goes up as the population as a whole is doing those things better. As smoking has gone down, life expectancy goes up because fewer people are dying of heart disease and lung cancer earlier than they otherwise would. Same thing, if the reason life expectancy might be going down is now you have obesity, and that is going to kill you early. Not that it's like, if you're really healthy, what can you expect to live to? Well, healthy people maybe can expect to live to 90, as if they're not going to get something really random like brain cancer out of nowhere. Unhealthy people, it's maybe less than 70, right? But if we're looking at 70, the Bible says you can 70. Yeah. I think if you can reduce your body weight, that's going to push you closer to whatever that maximum that you have as an individual. You know what I mean? Former slave Sylvester McGee supposedly lived to be 130, although there's apparently some doubt about the exact year of his birth. So this is the case with every person. There was another woman, a French woman, that supposedly lived to be 128 or something. And there were several experts that have gotten, I don't know if they've gotten in trouble, but they're basically like, looking at her and evaluating her, it's almost surely that she's 20 years younger than she said. That she lived a really long life. She lived to be 100, but it was actually her daughter. She was pretending to be her mother, right? Or she had taken her mother's name and was just pretending to be older to like collect more pension or something. I don't remember why they thought it up, but like she had assumed a different identity. She wasn't actually 128. She was actually 108, which is still very old. But it's like she's at 110, she's actually got the health of a 90-year-old or an 88-year-old. And it's like, no. I wonder if having a treatment for things like depression that involve a weeks-long retreat to go do manual labor on a farm or forestry service or something, I bet that'd help a good number of people. I think it would, right? Like, what are the things that, it's hard to know what the cause of depression is. The assumption is that there's some sort of social emotional cause, like you have trauma, or then there's like a chemical cause. Well, exercise can improve your body. Like if you just hit those 5 power laws, you're probably going to reduce your depression as well, right? If you lower your body fat, you'll feel better about yourself. You'll feel better every day, more energetic, less depressed. You exercise, you lower your body fat, you feel more energetic, stronger, more alert, better. Oh, the music stopped. My poor music stopped. Why did you stop? Video pause. Continue watching. Yes. I'll probably cure it. Fix your diet. Get rid of the sugar. Maybe you're depressed because you eat sugar and you're like sugar crashing, right? So cut that sugar out. Maybe you'll get, like if you tried those 5 things and sleeping, like add sleep, did the 6 things. If you just tried those for a month, I bet a lot of people who were like, I'm depressed, and then they do those things, it's like their symptoms of depression will probably go way down. Maybe enough to where they wouldn't need medication or something like that. Or, I'm not a professional. I'm not telling you what to do. But I have a more holistic approach to the human being. And my holistic approach to, or belief in the human being is really derived from theology. It's kind of a wild thing to think about, but it's derived from Catholic theology, traditional Christian theology. Of the body and the soul is not separate from the body. So I'm not like a Mormon who believes in the preexistence of the soul, or various other religions that believe in reincarnation of a soul into a new body. No, you are your body. So we start with that. I am my body. My body is not separate from me. My hand is not separate from me. Is my hand all that I am? No, right? I'm a whole thing. Okay, so the body affects the mind, affects the thoughts, affects the emotions, and likewise, the mind, I believe, can affect the body because it's all one system. It's all one thing that's happening together at the same time. You can't separate those two. And as soon as you separate them, you start encountering theological problems. It's like, okay, you're in the wrong body. You aren't your body. Okay, was Christ not his body? So was he couldn't have been fully man and fully God if you're not fully man, right? If having a human body doesn't make you human or make you something, then he wouldn't have been a human just because he had a human body. He would have been like God controlling a meat puppet or something, right? You're not a meat puppet, you are your body. So care for your body. Your body matters. Now, it's not everything that you are, because there's this soul that animates the body. You're not just dead matter, right? You're animated, you're moving, you're thinking, you're feeling, you're acting, you're choosing things. That's a core component of of my belief system, is that you have will, that your will is not tethered to some, you have free will, right? Your will is not tethered to automatically from some pre-existing set of events, right? You're not one event in a long series of events. Rather, you are an actor. You can do things. Just like God can choose to do things, you can choose to do things too, made in the image of God. So that whole body is going to matter, right? You should care for your body. It's your temple. Your body is your temple. Care for it. You shouldn't treat it like crap. Where does fasting come in? What about, these monks doing this fasting? Well, that is to put the body under the control of the mind, so that you are not serving purely the wants of the body, but rather the wants of the soul as well. Man does not live by bread alone. It doesn't say he doesn't live by bread. He doesn't live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. So tuning yourself more to God's will towards your mind, orienting yourself upwards, means being able to resist the urges of the body, at least temporarily, to do whatever you need to do. So one whole thing. And from that, it comes a lot of my opinions about a lot of stuff with the body, right? It's like, why I don't have tattoos. It's like, I'm not, it's not bad for having tattoos, but I don't want to have them. They're not a thing that I want on my body because it's just kind of a foreign thing to my body, right? I have repairs to my body. My body's broken, right? I have like I have the bone anchored hearing aid thing, and, people have fake hips, right? Is the fake hip part of your body? That's an interesting thing to think about. But really, we're like a whole thing. We're not separable. The mind, the soul and the body are together as one thing. Just like how you can't separate out Christ, the man, from Christ, the God. He's not a God inhabiting a human body. He's fully man and fully God. You're not body and soul. You are an ensouled body. You are a bodied soul, like whatever you want to call it. I wonder, I think having treatment, I think the emotional stuff goes along with the physical stuff as well. And people who practice fasting for religious reasons can tell you that it produces different mental effects as well. Maybe fasting could cure depression. Maybe if you just didn't eat for 24 hours and prayed, that would help with some of your depression. Who knows? Right. My brother's a psychologist, and sometimes I want to bring up how soft his science is. I was doing a master's in neuroscience, and even that felt wishy-washy at points. The reproducibility crises is a big slap in the face of scientific elitism. I've heard the exact same thing from many people. Psychology is closer to a pseudoscience, and that upsets a lot of people because, like, we're attaching the scientific method to psychological studies, but it is very soft as far as what comes out of it, right? Like, how do you know, like, what's a personality disorder? I think they're really useful and predictive, but not 100% predictive. It's not like a physics thing where there's like a law that you can really determine what's going to happen. You can get the spaceship to go up and come back down and land on the pad because you're so precise with your math, which was something that happened this week or last week, So that's how it is. And yeah, like neuroscience, we'll talk about, like, we don't know how the brain works. It's like, we know how neurons work, right? But the brain as a whole complex system is still pretty mysterious and really fabulous. Before it's like, well, what if we're going to upload our consciousness into a machine? It's like, we don't really know what consciousness is, bro. We don't know what that is to upload into a machine. It's like, what if I could transfer my brain into a computer? Like, it's like, we don't know how that works. We don't know from whence thoughts arise. We don't know what consciousness comes from. It's like, I saw a guy publish a paper that basically said consciousness is a complete illusion. And it's like, that's correct. And it's like, did you write that? Did you think of that yourself, sir? In other words, you engaged conscious will to create the paper. Therefore, it can't be an illusion. But it's not a thing that you can touch. You can't touch consciousness. It's not. Is it in the brain? It's in there somewhere, maybe. When you lose consciousness, when you fall asleep, like your brain, there's something wrong with your brain, right? How would you classify Johann de Mage? I'm going to Google it to make sure. I don't know. I think he's a conductor, right? Oh, you know what? I have played this symphony. Yes, okay. Symphony number 1 for wind ensemble, nicknamed the Lord of the Rings Symphony. I have performed that. It's a lot of fun. So I think it's great. It's I would call it in the post-romantic style, is what I would call it. I would say stylistically, it's very close to the post-romantic style. Maybe call it neo-post-romantic or neoclassical would be a good way to put it. I think neoclassical is what the label that a lot of people put on it. It's good. So yeah. I've been getting a lot of debut music in my recommendations lately. Small indie musicians putting out songs and albums. I check them out sometimes. I do too. I really love discovering new things. There's a huge diversity of things going on. It's so much that it's just hard to find things to attach to. Let me share one that I think is really good. Dungeon Synth. Here it is. Tales Under the Oak. Let me find it on Bandcamp. I'm going to link these guys. It's cool. They have little stories and stuff that go with their little albums. And they have a bunch of little albums here. It's cool. I'm gonna link it. Fun stuff. Should do a Dungeon Synth Symphony. Actually, you couldn't, because the formal organization of Dungeon Synth would kind of go against Symphony, I think. Both the stats and the story role-playing in Skyrim are inferior to the previous Elder Scrolls games. I think so, but I think the story's still there, and the environments are really good. My PC wasn't powerful enough back then since I upgraded. Yeah, I remember back in the early 2000s before VR that 3D was supposed to be the next big thing. It was for a while. Like, the PS3 is a 3D, is a stereoscopic 3D console. Technically, so is the PS4 with the PSVR, which you can watch 3D movies on your PS4. So if you have 3D Blu-rays, you can watch them on your PS4 with the PSVR. And you can get a PSVR really cheap, like $50. It's pretty cool. Oh yeah, they add AI language models to NPCs, and it's nuts. So they can like respond to you and talk to you. That's cool. Like, that is definitely fulfilling the promise of VR we had from the 1990s and 1980s even. I tried Skyrim once years and years ago. My computer froze and crashed during the first escape mission. It's still good. I think still there's a reason people haven't moved on past Skyrim. Nobody's come out with a game that's been as good as Skyrim. Nobody's, like, people are hyped for Elder Scrolls 6 because they've been waiting for a game that's as good as Elder Scrolls 6 that does that same thing. Nobody's done it. Nobody's done a game that does what Elder Scrolls does. Just no one's done it. Doesn't mean there's not good RPG games, you know. We had Baldur's Gate 3 is really good. I've done it on stream. It's a great game. Not even remotely the same as Skyrim. People are wanting that VR experience. Skyrim basically gave you a VR experience in 2011, and it gave you a real VR experience in like 2016 and all the way up to today. That's what people want, right? They want that. That's what they want. Sorry, my allergies just are going crazy again. I feel like every stream. I sit down and I start talking, and then like my nose starts going crazy, so I apologize for that. Going nose on the stream, sneezing. It's no good. Alien Isolation mod was nuts in VR too. Felt like a backstage pass to the set of a movie. That's cool. Are you familiar with Elizabeth Zaroff, aka the charismatic voice? Nope. You know what? I've seen the videos pop up, and I don't really want to watch them. They're not for me, right? I live with an opera singer. She gives me reactions to all kinds of things, like Blind Guardian. It's like opera singer reacts to Blind Guardian, or like vocal coach reacts to Blind Guardian. Like, I live with a vocal coach, and she's already reacted to Blind Guardian for me. She's like, his voice sounds like this, and it's strained here, and I'm like, yeah, Hansi does sound weird, but I kind of like it, so it's all good. You know, singing through his nose. I'm sure it's good content. It just doesn't interest me. It's best he's not attached to the dumpster fire that game will be. I assume you're talking about Elder Scrolls 6. I think we've just degenerated. We used to live for quite a while. So there are historic people that lived for long periods of time, like St. Anthony lived to be over 100, supposedly. But they didn't really exceed maximum lifespan, like 120, which is what Moses supposedly lived to. Like, you have to find, like, post-flood, you have to find... the only one I could think of who lived longer was maybe, like, Abraham. He might have lived to like 160 if you're looking at that in the Bible, right? These are like biblical figures, though. These aren't like modern people where we can have a reasonable idea that they've lived to be 120. And I call it a soft cap because maybe someone can get a little bit past it, but I don't think we're going to be living to 140 or 150, and I don't think we're going to be immortal. I don't think you're going to come up with nanobots that can de-age you. I mean, maybe 1,000 years in the future, but that's assuming that we can like keep gaining enough knowledge and technology to do it. Line does not always go up, guys. You can have dark ages. We can plummet into a dark age because of our bad politics. You know, that might happen. To live long, avoid the things that make life worth living. Well, If you think alcohol makes life worth living, I feel really sorry for you, dude. If you think smoking is what makes life worth living, I feel really sorry for you. If you think eating slop, if you think eating Jack in the Box every day is what makes life worth living, I'm really sorry for you, right? I ate Jack in the Box like last night. I don't deprive myself of like good tasting food all the time, but I could definitely get leaner, but like, I try to stick to a healthy diet. Why? Because I don't want to die early, because there's reasons that I have to be alive. Right? I have children. I have family. Those are the reasons to be alive, not to smoke. I don't know. That seems like, no offense, but that seems like a very like infantile way of viewing life. Like, the things that are worth living for are your pleasures to the infinite amount. And the truth is, you can have any of those pleasures, but you just need to have them in moderation. Like, philosophers, saints have talked about this. It's just good prudence, right? It's good temperance. It's the virtue of temperance. Have the virtue of temperance, and it'll probably eliminate the things that are going to kill you early. You have to think, if somebody's drinking a pint of alcohol every day, they're gonna die early. A pint of whiskey. If they're drinking a handle of whiskey every day, they're gonna die. You're not gonna make it. So yeah, just don't do that, right? Have a couple drinks once a month. I have a drink once every other month. I don't miss alcohol. If my life was bad enough to where it's like the only thing that makes life worth living is being drunk, I need to fix something. And the first place to start fixing it is to cut the alcohol out, so that you can find something else that's worthwhile. And my heart goes out to you if you feel like I have to drink and smoke, that's what makes life worth living. Because I think you got it pretty rough if that's the case. We're animals. You got to get back on the hamster wheel and stop eating poison. It's more simple, and psychs don't want to admit it. You got a point, But it's simple, and we're a complex thing, but sometimes simple things have a big effect, right? Exercise stimulates the anti-fragile response from all these different systems in your body, including like your nervous system. This is a thing that like experienced lifters will talk about, is your nervous system. Usually we think of nervous system like, my nervous system is up here, but your nervous system goes through your whole body, and training your muscles will actually stimulate your nerves. And like, part of training to be strong is actually training your nervous system to be able to move large weight. There was this idea that like, in any given contraction of your muscles, your body's only engaging a part of the muscle fibers. And so a large part of gaining strength is training your body to engage more muscle fibers. It's a nervous system thing. It's not just how thick are my muscle fibers? How many muscle fibers do I have? But like, are you able to activate all your muscle fibers to lift that heavy weight? And people talk about your nervous system getting burned out from lifting heavy. Like, what the heck does that mean? That's a whole thing. I was profoundly depressed after leaving the military, even though I was excited to get out. Very, very common experience. Wasted a few months, then got tired of being sad. Went to 2 rock concerts in the same week. Cured me. Yeah, well, very common experience. A lot of people get out of the military, and the thing everybody focuses on these days is things like PTSD, but very often it's just a loss of purpose, right? When you're in the military, there's a mission. Everything is directed towards a purpose. Even if you're annoyed by it, even if there's all kinds of BS from higher ups, you feel like there's a reason that you're doing this. You're doing things. You're on a mission. And when you're out in the real world, it's not that way. It's like, how does me going to a call center to cold call people do anything good? How does that? That's not directed towards anything. Same thing if you get out and you go to college. It's like, why does me going to English class matter? The professor doesn't care whether I go. The students don't care whether I go. If I do or I don't go, it doesn't affect anything. Why am I going? I guess to get something out of it for me, but you know, my friend Mike was like, he was in the Navy, and he's like, you know, you have to kind of think of it like a quest, right? Like you have a quest to do this, and that's the quest. So he had like a mission mindset for things. Like you can approach life like it's a quest, like it's your quest log. You got to clear out your World of Warcraft. You got to clear out your life quest log. You have a quest to do something. You need to work on that quest. You know, it's a cool way to think of it. Jack LaLanne was a fitness advocate for decades, and he was healthy until 2 weeks before he passed at the age of 95. But George Burns, who regularly smoked cigars, lived to 100. Genetics are real, man. But look at that. Like Jack LaLanne probably reached his maximum life at 95. For whatever he had going on, whatever he inherited, 95, that's really old. And that's, hey, he probably hit his cap for what he had. George Burns, he might have had a cap of 110. Smoked cigars, lived to 100. Who knows what his cap was, right? But, you know, you can smoke and still be healthy. Your lungs are crap, but you do all else. Well, the thing is, that's the other thing, is smoking is really associated with heart disease as well. So I don't think it's just your lungs, at least my understanding. I'm not a doctor, but heart disease happens a lot with smokers. Maybe that's not nicotine, though. I've heard of people say, like, no, nicotine doesn't do it. It's like all the other shit. It's like, okay, you know, the tar, right? The tar in the cigarettes is what causes the cancer, not the nicotine. That's something I don't understand. If you're not separate from your body, or if the soul isn't separate from it, then how do you pass on from heaven or to hell? Forgive me if I'm misunderstanding. So you can watch a video. There's a video on Thomas Aquinas talking about this. So imagine that you're being like dismembered, right? Like you have your arms amputated, and you have your legs amputated, and then eventually you have your head amputated. What's left? What's left is the anima, is the soul. So the anima, the soul, can be separated from the body, but it's not a separate entity from the body. Just like how if you lose an arm, you're still you. You may not have an arm, but you're not you anymore. You're still you. You're still you as long as you're you, right? It's a whole thing. The quality of your years matter too, I agree. Fasting really does change your thinking, rejuvenate cells, and more. And they're finding more interesting effects that fasting can have on your body. It can stimulate growth hormone, things like that. Kind of weird to think about. Fasting for circumstances is key. Like Muhammad knew that alcohol and pork would raise body temperature and stress the body in the heat of the desert. I didn't know if he knew that, but it's interesting that might be the case. It's the one thing I agree with Scientologists with. Psychology is really something to be careful with. Psychology, to a great degree, manipulation. You can use it in effective ways of suggestion to help someone figure something out, but it's used more to influence. Yeah, and it can be used in the 20th century. People forget about lots of the bad ways it was used to forcibly imprison people, to lobotomize them. John F. Kennedy's sister was lobotomized and became incontinent and unable to talk for the rest of her life as a psychological surgery. They inserted the guy who invented it. He inserted a thing into the eye socket, and then you could sever the frontal lobe. And his idea was that it would like force the brain to regenerate all the patterns and everything. He just viewed it mechanistically, but it was horrible. It was horrible. There's all kinds of horrors that grew out of psychological belief in the 20th century. Shock therapy, forced imprisonment, forced medication of people, because a doctor who studies psychology says this person is mad. What's the difference between romantic and post-romantic? So, romantic, you have to kind of think that they're styles that grow out of each other, right? The classical style grows out of the Galant, which grows out of the Baroque. And in some ways, they are reacting to what came before them, and they're also taking what came before them and working with it. So the classical period is taking the harmonic organization of the Baroque, and they are focusing on melodies and formal organization. The Romantic period's taking the harmonic stuff from the classical period and expanding it. They're creating chord extensions, And they're also pushing the formal organization and being more loose with it. And the ethos behind the Romantic period is really about emotion. Expressing oneself fully, expressing emotion, making something maximally sad or maximally happy, in whatever degree. It's about it being emotionally complex and interesting in that way, rather than the Baroque, which was very much about counterpoint, and the Classical, which was very much about beautiful and articulate and virtuosic melodies. The Post-Romantic really is just the next step of the Romantic, where we're now going to step outside of the boundaries of harmonic organization from Johann Fuchs up to that point. And we're going to do more extreme harmonies, and we're going to change keys more often. And we're going to present chords outside of the context of the keys that they're in. If we're getting to something like Debussy, which is really in its own style that we call impressionistic, but it's kind of in the post-romantic period, so those things kind of go together, I guess. He did what's called pandiatonicism, which was using the notes of a key, but in a non-functional way, making the harmony non-functional. So you're no longer adhering to the rules of the 18th century by the time you get to the post-romantic. You're breaking them down. You're still, however, using chords. You're still formally organizing your music. You're just taking everything to a bigger extreme. If you want to think of a pop music example, the Baroque period was like jazz, and the classical music was like rock and roll and rock. The post-romantic is like progressive rock. You're just adding, you're taking it as far as it can go. You're doing concept albums and things. So operas in the first part of the 19th century were very different from operas like with Richard Wagner by the end of the 19th century, where he would have one piece of music that ran continuously for 24 minutes and was a whole first act of an opera, like the Flying Dutchman. Right, so the Flying Dutchman, the first act is all one like continuous flowing piece of music. That was really pushing the boundaries of what you were doing up to that point. I think I said 24 minutes. It may be quite a bit longer. I haven't watched Flying Dutchman in quite some time. But anyway, it really was pushing those boundaries. The boundaries of formal organization, the boundaries of harmony, the boundaries of very, very studied prelude is the prelude to Tristan und Isolde by Richard Wagner, because the harmony is functional, but it does not adhere to the rules and the norms of harmony prior to that. So the harmony, the dissonance and consonance resolution happens very tightly within voice movement, almost in a Baroque fashion, but it doesn't adhere to regular, this is a 1 chord and this is a 5/7 chord. The formal or the chord organization that you have prior to that. So that's the post-romantic. So that's the difference between them. Really, the post-romantic is just kind of the next step from the romantic. And after that, you get the modern, which is all about creating new aesthetic systems, whether it's pandiatonicism, like with Debussy, or the more lambasted, like 12th tone of Arnold Schoenberg. Mods are why people play it, not Bethesda. I would say that so we're going back to Elder Scrolls V. I would say that except no one would write a mod for Elder Scrolls V if it was not a good game to begin with. No one would be making mods for Elder Scrolls games like Morrowind or Oblivion if they were not good games to begin with. So they are good games. That's why people want to make mods for them, to make them even better. Now, do the mods make it worth playing? No. Do they make the experience potentially much better? Yes. The game has to be good on its own. The core game is very good on its own. I followed an electronic music composer who transcribed all the great classical literature for synths. It's a worthy endeavor, but it wasn't the same. That said, I tried it myself. I would try to compose the new stuff kind of within the strengths of the synth. And I would probably use acoustic instruments as well, like Vangelis. He viewed it as like the synth is just another instrument I can use. Like I can use a saxophone and a synth, or a violin and a synth. Why can't I'd use both? It's just another instrument to be used, more textures that I can play with. The Blade Runner soundtrack, I believe, was composed with I'm trying to remember what synth it was. I I think it was the Prophet 5. I could be wrong, though. It's a very famous early synth. Very characteristic on that soundtrack. But he also used acoustic instruments, too, for Blade Runner. So I might do that. That might be like a cool quest. Is like, let's do a sonata for electronic, or just sonata for non-standard instrumentation. And we'll call it a symphony so that people because it's a good marketing term versus sonata. But yeah, I'm not hyped for ES6 anymore. I fully expect a fail. It's my expectation after Fallout 4. If I expect it to be at the level of Fallout 4, it's just going to be mediocre. Yeah, there'll be a disappointment. And I think Elder Scrolls fans have a higher level to pass. They have a higher bar. Their bar is high, especially with modded Skyrim versus Fallout 4, which Fallout fans just don't have as high a bar, in my opinion. Yeah, my wife, that's how we met. So my wife is an opera singer. We met in college when we were music students. That's where we met. And we performed together, and I need to record some more stuff with her. Maybe that's another quest. Adam, Methuselah, and Noah lived a long time, but that's the range people consider fantasy. It's also pre-flood. So in the Bible, there is still Plato's descent of golden man to Iron Man. Adam is a golden man. Long-lived, healthy, very close to God. Then you fall to Silverman, and then finally to Iron Man, right? Now, it's not spelled out like that, but it's there, right? The people, the pre-Diluvic people, the pre-flood people, of which some were Nephilim. What are the Nephilim? Traditionally, it's the offspring of fallen angels and people. Demigods. Then, and afterwards. Great heroes. They lived, 800 years. They lived hundreds of years, according to the Bible. So, they were different. And then something happened after the flood, and man falls further. He falls further away. He becomes more degraded. To 120 will be his number. And then you can expect 70. 70. Have you heard much of, oh boy, it's a Polish name. I'm going to butcher it. Wojciech Kilar's music. Let me see if I know something by him. Let's see what he did. Oh, he did the score to Dracula. Ooh, that's a good score. Yeah, that's a good score. I'm not sure what I call the style. I think it's film score style, which is going to be mostly neoclassical. Having abandoned avant-garde music technical means almost entirely continue to employ simplified musical language. Oh, he did Exodus? Oh, he's done a bunch of stuff. Yeah. Okay. And The Pianist. Yeah, he's done some great music as a film composer. Yeah, he's great. Functional training is likely perfect for people. Just training is probably perfect. Don't worry too much about functional, right? What is non-functional training? I've had people say this, what is bench pressing non-functional training? It's well, what's functional training? Push-ups. I'm it's the same motion. Just bench press is on a bar. It's so that your back, you can lift heavier weight without hurting your back. Versus you could put bricks on your back and do push-ups. I've heard this too. I'm going to swing this hammer around. Ooh, that's cool, dude. That's a cool exercise. That sounds rad. Are you doing that in real life? It's like, no. It's like, how is that functional? Well, it builds these muscles that you use to do this thing. It's like, or you could just do that thing, right? Go chop wood. That's functional exercise. So it's exercise. So I just think if whatever you do, exercise, just do it. And it's probably going to be good for you. You know, I walk backwards on a treadmill all the time. It's like, how many times are you walking backwards uphill? Not that often, but it does engage the knees in a cool way. And that makes them stronger, I think, for other things. If working a call center is questing, that's what I had subscribed from the game. My quest is to make enough money for rent. It's a grind. I gotta grind out my rent money by calling these people on the phone. Oh no. I believe that tar is what causes the cancer theory. My grandfather was a coal miner and died of cancer, never smoked a day in his life, but he had black spots all over his lungs. That's what I've heard. I've heard that as well. Yep, Christ didn't resurrect as a spirit, but with his body, and his body ascended to heaven. Not his spirit. He didn't leave his body behind. His whole body ascended, right? And also his resurrected body is a reflection of what our body will be able to be once we're cleansed of sin. Is that it will be, you know, we can't have immortality and it be in a fallen state. We have to be cured of the fallen state to be able to have the perfect body as well. Love the hat. Thank you. This is part of my Halloween costume. It's a green wizard outfit. It's flopped over on the side. Let me get it like set up better. It gets a little warm in Houston with a leather hat, let me tell you, but it's a very cool hat. It's a Blonde Swan hat. Blonde Swan makes these. You can get other ones that are cool. I'm going to maybe get some feathers. I'm thinking like what kind of feathers to put in the hat, you know? I found this feather in the forest, so I stuck it in the hat. I don't know. Maybe some peacock feathers would be cool. Carcass in LA last night was awesome. Yeah, I love Carcass. I can't really go to rock concerts too much anymore, and I think I may just give them up entirely because of the noise level. Like, my hearing is too precious to me, and I just can't risk it. I feel like I just can't risk it anymore. Unless I'm the guy going with like earmuffs on, and like then I can't hear it, you know. So I think I haven't made a video on this, and I'll maybe collect my thoughts and make it a video. It's like why I'm not going to like metal concerts anymore, why I'm not going to rock concerts anymore. It's really the noise, you know. My hearing's been bad. My left ear's not good anymore. I have to protect what little I have. I can't be casual with sound exposure. And I've went to some rock concerts that I've always like used some amount of hearing protection, even if I forgot earplugs, and like stuffed my ears with like paper towels or something to kind of cut the high end, at least cut the high end a little bit. You know, the high end's so screeching sometimes. But I just can't, you know, I can't risk it anymore. Like I don't want to live a life where I can't understand what my children are saying to me because of sound exposure. So I think I'm going to have to like leave concert attendance to like another part of my life, unless there's someone in the band who wants me to come to the concert or like wants to hang out at the concert. You know, like I got invited to Camelot concert and got to hang out with the band afterwards, which was an awesome experience by the drummer who at least used to watch the show, used to watch the channel, Alex Landenberg. Great drummer, also plays for Syra, maybe some other groups too that I'm forgetting about. Got to go and hang out with everyone from the band afterwards. They were super nice, very healthy guys. They had a weight set up back there. You know, they live, you know, yeah. Sean and at least Sean was drinking a beer afterwards. You know, they may have a beer or two after the performance. Whatever, dude. It's cool. Just relax. They weren't like getting plastered or anything. And, you know, a couple of the guys, they were working out afterwards, you know, staying healthy, trying to stay as healthy as possible. I'm all for it. Rosemary Kennedy's lobotomy wasn't done with the ice pick method. They opened the top of her skull and used a butter knife-like instrument. They kept her awake the whole time. Disgusting. It still left her like incontinent and horrible. It's because she was an embarrassment to the family. She might have had something else going on, but she might have had histrionic personality disorder. But she was being an embarrassment to the family, so they lobotomized her. Awful. Think being awake and aware during brain surgery is fairly common. Got to make sure the surgeons aren't doing too much damage. I've heard of that as well. Yeah, the prog rock analogy is very apt, given the example. That was the intention. They had her recite the Lord's Prayer, count backwards during the operation in order to prevent damage, but it clearly didn't work. The Tristan chord, wasn't it an augmented chord of some kind? I barely remember this. Yeah, it starts as an augmented chord, or I think it starts as a... I have to remember. I think it starts as a diminished chord with like an extra chord note, but it's really about the contrapuntal movement of it. So people always study that because it doesn't fit into like, well, what is this? Is this a Neapolitan chord? It's like, no, it's its own thing. It doesn't have to fit into the like classical style, and that was the whole point, is that it's kind of pushing past that barrier. I have to remember it, pull it out sometime and look at it. We secretly smile at the German tourists who come in groups and sit at a cafe bar, each commanding his own half-liter of Heineken. Emil really screwed the pooch with Starfield's writing. I'm not hopeful for Elder Scrolls 6. The writing, it's really easy to screw up writing. It's constantly screwed up. So you don't have to tell me that. Voices of the Void, the Symphony. That would be like a... Yeah, that would be something really dark, I think. For whatever reason, he won't be fired. There has to be more on why he's kept on. I'm going to read this from Hardwick. Joseph Kennedy had a massive stroke years later. His wife thought it was divine retribution for having their daughter lobotomized. JFK got his brain blown to bits in his assassination. RFK was also shot in the brain. Ted Kennedy died of brain cancer. This year, RFK Jr. revealed that doctors found a dead worm in his head, that it had eaten part of his brain. Wow. Wasn't Shelah, Aber, and Peleg after the flood? They lived to 400. I don't know. I don't know off the top of my head. Is that in the Bible? I don't remember that. I don't remember this character from the Bible. Shelah was the son of Eber. So anyway, the point is, like, after the flood, they decay. You have a decay from, like, the silver people after the flood. So that would be, if they were 400 after the flood. I don't remember where it says that they're 400, but yeah, after the flood, they've gone from 800 to Noah's age, which was like 500 or less, and then down to 120, right? So yeah, maybe you're right. But anyway, you have this. It's a theme that occurs in a lot of European mythology. A golden man going down to the silver man, going down to the iron man, which is us. We lose the image. We lose the likeness of God. We have the image of God, but we lose the likeness of God. We get further from God. We get more degraded. We get more degenerated. We get worse over time, devolved, if you will. There's no such thing as devolution. Evolution just doesn't have a direction. It just changes, right? Yeah. Oh, yes. Okay. That's pretty much functional training. Doing movements and strength training is what we do in everyday life. The Bioneer is a great channel that focuses on it. Okay. Cool. What functional training is. I have a friend who's like a physical therapist, and he does all kinds of stuff like this. Oh, this will do these, work on all these stabilizers that you don't use a lot, and help prevent this kind of injury. This whole thing was doing exercises like that, you know. You said you find most MCU scores forgettable. Are there any exceptions? I don't really have an opinion on the Captain America one, really. I just don't. Sorry. I don't remember it. I don't remember what it is. The Kennedy curse is some high weirdness for sure. Europe, even the Soviets were outspoken against the lobotomized therapy before the 80s when the Americans started lobbying against it. Yeah, this is so it's interesting because the guy who did like the ice pick lobotomy thing, the intraorbital lobotomy, we like go in here. He basically was like peddling it to like mental institutions, like I'll come do it for this amount of fee. It was totally like a product of not the free market exactly, but a product of the kind of freedom that we have in the U.S. that somebody go around peddling your wares, like I'm peddling surgery. What? And he designed it. He's like, this way really poor mental hospitals can afford to lobotomize people. This important treatment. Crazy to think about. I saw a great PBS thing on a guy. He's a bus driver. He got lobotomized as a kid because his stepmother didn't like him. And he goes, I asked my dad, like, why you allowed that? And it's like, I had to, you know, my dad would basically let my mom ruin my life by giving me a lobotomy. It's like, I feel disconnected from my emotions, like I feel nothing. He could still drive a bus, you know. You should watch Emil's speech on video game writing and critique it sometime. So I'm also gonna say something about video game writing that I say it a lot, but I want to say it more. If you make a good game, the writing doesn't matter that much. It matters, and it matters more in certain genres than others. But people really notice the bad writing if the game sucks. If the game isn't fun, that's when people pick up on the bad writing. And the truth is, if your game is really fun, they will forgive a lot of bad writing. So part of the problem with modern bad writing is games are just not as fun. Does the original God of War have great writing? I don't think it does. But it's really fun. So you just kind of roll with the weird story and let it be fun. And you don't worry too much about the writing. Is the writing of Symphony of the Night very good? No, but it's a really fun game, so it doesn't matter. The story's not that important. What's the story of Super Mario Galaxy? There's not much dialogue. I think Cappy talks to you a couple times. Bowser talks. There's not much story. It doesn't matter. So if the game's fun, the story's not going to matter that much. So what's the big problem with Starfield? The big problem with Starfield is not the writing. It's not even the DEI stuff. It's not fun. That's what everyone says. It's boring, repetitive things, and it's just not very fun. So if the game is not very fun, you're going to notice the bad writing because that's the thing that you're going to keep noticing. This game's boring and it's really annoying. Whereas, like, you just forgive bad writing if the game is fun. If the game's not fun and the writing's really good, you might forgive the bad gameplay. Most people aren't, though. They're going to get bored by it and turn it off even if the writing is good. It's just not going to continue. So, as big a problem as video game writing might be, it's the gameplay getting worse and more boring and becoming a bunch of little isolated little Skinner box systems that waste your time, that makes games not fun. The original God of War game is an amazing game. Why? Because you're Kratos and you're rolling around and you're killing dudes and you're solving puzzles and you're killing dudes. And that's the game, right? The moveset that you get within the first level is more or less the moveset that you have through the whole game. You don't have to go on a quest to collect herbs. You don't have to do any of that shit. It's just fun. It's just the fun part of the game. Actually, I think that's why Dark Souls is good. Dark Souls is like gameplay. It's playing a game. And that's also why the difficulty works, is that it doesn't waste your time with like endless cutscenes. You're just playing a game. That's why it's so good. You know, yeah. There's a passage in Penny's Arkham file, which Arthur stole, that Penny Fleck, a servant of Thomas Wayne, had undergone lobotomization. Ooh. Speaking of mental asylums, Reagan gets all the hate for shutting them down, but it was a process which began well before his presidency, just after One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was published. Yeah, and there were major problems with that people don't remember. Like, there's one from a movie called Changeling, a Clint Eastwood movie, which starring Angelina Jolie, I think, where she was locked up in a mental institution. Right? It basically allowed you to imprison people without a trial, and so it could be very abused. And lobotomizing was all the rage back then, just like blocking hormones is today. Maybe people should not mess with the body so much. Yeah, and it's like, there's a problem with this. There's a problem with emotional state in the mind. And then, because people view the mind as a purely physical process, they're like, well, obviously we should manipulate it with something physical. We'll mutilate the genitals to fix this. 41%, guys, and rising. 41% and rising. 41% a couple years ago. It's going up for that treatment. So lobotomy, we'll do something special with the brain to fix the emotions. It's a complex system. You're probably doing more harm than good. Starfield's narrative structure was the problem. It's like they wrote it in pieces and assembled it incorrectly. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Most of the time, game stories are about moving you through various set pieces and not telling a coherent story. In fact, something like Skyrim is not about telling a coherent story. There is one there, but the story mostly gets you around Skyrim. It gets you from here to there, to there, to there, to there. You have to go around and talk to Jarls, and then that just gets you to another set piece where you can do littler stories. And that's why Skyrim is so good. It feels like you're out adventuring. The story just kind of pulls you through the set pieces. And that's most video game stories, and that's fine. Back in the day, game studios would have had the guy who fixed the copy machines fill in the game's backstory in the manual. Yeah, they didn't care. To come up with something. Like, have you read the backstory for Zelda 2? In the manual? It's crazy. It's like, what does this have to do with the game? I don't even understand what's going on here. What does this have to do with the game? It's so weird. Yeah. Yeah, I think we looked up who did the Final Fantasy IV translation was done with like the help of an intern. It was done by like the whoever was the lead on. It was like done by one of the producers and an intern who knew English. They're like, you know English? Here, help me translate this for the English market. Western RPGs are structured to be more open-ended. You just make decisions. JRPGs tell a linear story like a book. Yeah. Yep, I get that. Starfield should be more in the Western category. I need to blow my nose again. I'm really sorry, guys. Watch this. I'm gonna... Now you don't have to listen to that. Spoony Bard! I don't think Woosley did anything wrong. The Woosleyisms. So Spoony Bard was apparently not Ted Woosley. Apparently that was just an intern for Final Fantasy IV, and Woosley did Final Fantasy VI. Which I think the dialogue for Final Fantasy VI is fine. I think it's fine. So, I mean, I could be wrong. See, Brian's in the chat. It's good. I'm going to link his blog. I'll link his blog. Always good stuff. He had a month to translate all of Secret of Mana, Ted Woosley did, and the text in the original Japanese ROM was stored out of order. He gets some hate, though, yeah. There's also there were also problems. I know with the first Final Fantasy game, for example, is that the space they had to display and save text was smaller than you needed to do it in English a lot of times. So you had to be really creative with what you said, or just leave a lot of things out. That's why, like, the original Final Fantasy translation for the NES is just, and I streamed the game. It's just not that good. You can remember that the Japanese written language is syllabic, so each character is an entire syllable, which makes it, on average, almost twice as efficient per character as English. So you could say a sentence, or you could write a sentence in Japanese in 15 characters, and in English it would take 35 characters to say the same thing, maybe more. So you have to start figuring out how can I fit the English in that text box, because sometimes we can't do multiple text boxes to do it. So the technical limitations for early games made it so that the English translation was often really sparse and bad, because you just couldn't include all the words you needed to. I think Zelda 2 might have done that as well. Some of those famous ones, like I am Error. It's like, is your name Error? There wasn't maybe enough room to say my name is Error, or, kind of funny things. Little funny things here and there. Let's play money-making game. Secret is in dead tree. Why does he talk like that? It's terrible dialogue. It's like, well, you only had so many characters to try to translate the Japanese. There was an RPG that Woosley designed. I did not know this. That came out in '99. A blatant Final Fantasy VII knockoff. Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah, Woosley did Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger. Maybe he did Mana as well. Secret of Mana. That's interesting. It's always interesting stuff to think about with that. So yeah, the writing in a JRPG is going to matter more, maybe, than a Western RPG, because it needs to have a stronger narrative. And I think that's why people like JRPGs, is like you're just going through a story, and that's fun. Whether it's like Ni no Kuni or it's Final Fantasy or something, that feels good, right? You're not wondering what to do. But the freedom of a Western RPG means that strict narrative structure kind of has to go away most of the time, and you need to give the player freedom, which means you just have to design a lot of little quests for them to do, and that's where the fun comes from. Shadow Madness. His name is Woolsey, not Woosley. You sure it's not Woosley? Woolsey. Woosleyism. I think Woosley sounds better. He should change his name to the way I say it. Woosley. I think it's because I knew a Woosley and not a Woolsey. A Woolsey. Maybe it's a Woolsey. Woolsey. I don't know. I saw something with GoldenEye 007. It's like, say something bad about GoldenEye 007. It just wasn't that good a game. It wasn't very good. I mean, it was okay. It wasn't great, even by the standards of the time it came out. However, why do people like GoldenEye? I've talked about this before. I call it the GoldenEye effect, which is you remember a game being better than it really is because of the context in which you played it. So you played it on a Nintendo 64. It was probably your console. You were a kid. Therefore, you were having a lot of fun exploring new and interesting things like games. And chances are, if you were a kid with an N64, you didn't have a PC capable of running real 3D shooters like Quake, Doom, Marathon, Dark Forces, those kinds of games. So you just didn't have that hardware available. So you just didn't really have anything to compare it to. Or maybe you could play Wolfenstein on your PC. And of course it's better than Wolfenstein. But you're not playing it like compared to the stuff that was around at the time. It's actual contemporary stuff. So you didn't have that comparison. And it doesn't matter because you had fun playing it on your TV in your living room during a good time in your life. And more importantly, you had that 4-player multiplayer, which was a technical feat at the time on the Nintendo 64, even if it ran at 10 frames per second, where you and 4 friends could eat pizza and play GoldenEye together and have a great time. So it facilitated some fun. It really did facilitate some great fun. But the great fun was probably the time in your life combined with the fact that you were having great, like, brotherly, fun interactions with friends. That's what made the game really fun, more than its inherent quality. You know? So it's not a bad game, but I consider it mediocre compared to the other things that were around at the same time. You know, compared to Quake or Quake 2, I think it's not a particularly impressive shooter compared to Unreal. You know, when did Unreal come out? Unreal came out in 1998, so Unreal came out a year later. I believe GoldenEye came out in 1997. So Unreal came out a year later. Of course, if you're comparing Unreal to GoldenEye, Unreal's going to blow it out of the water, right? Marathon Story, making that into a looter shooter or whatever it's called, was amazing in the worst way when the trailer came out. I haven't paid attention to their reboot of Marathon. The original Marathon games are awesome. They are a lot of fun, and they are sometimes really tough as nails. And they have a really cool story. So the way that they told the story was you're basically doing missions from these AIs that you interact with at a computer terminal. They go and tell you what to do. And I really liked it. It had the game has a great atmosphere. I should really do a video or do some streaming of it or something, because especially the original Marathon game had some great atmosphere for the time. Just great. Very dark, spooky, kind of a broken space station kind of stuff that was really cool at the time. Like you could look out a window and see space. It was really cool in 1994, guys. So, you know, a game like that told a story it used the limitations to tell a really unique story. You learn the story by interacting with this AI because the levels couldn't really tell a story with the levels. Like this was pre GoldenEye, you know, it was pre Half-Life, games like that. So you told the story as best you could. You could tell it on like loading screens, and so they did that, and it was really, really good. They did a really good job with it. So I'd say here's how you play the original Marathon right now. By the way, you just can Google Aleph 1. I'll just link it. So it's a new engine. It's an open source engine that you can play Marathon with. The original Marathon games I think are abandonware, so you can just play them if you want to. I bought them in the 90s, so, you know, I have a huge CD of maps that I would love to see if I could figure out if I could get the maps off of that CD from the 90s and, like, bring them back, you know. Yeah, GoldenEye was great because you played on a console with 3 other friends in your living room. Maybe you had some pizza, you know what I'm saying? Right? It's not a bad game, but it's not, like, that good. And as good as that experience was, if you guys never if you never had a LAN party where you played like Jedi Knight against each other, Jedi Knight is so much better than GoldenEye. Oh man, when did Dark Forces 2 come out? I think that one was maybe no, not Dark Forces 2 remastered. I don't want that. I want just Dark Forces 2. 1997. So yes. 1997 for both of those. When did this one come out? Yeah, they came out around the same time. Jedi Knight blows GoldenEye out of the water. It was so much better. giant levels, crazy cool gameplay, way more gameplay, a really good story that was new and original to the game, not just like telling the GoldenEye story. Amazing graphics for the time, very smooth to play, but it was a PC game. This is a PC game. But if you ever played that on a LAN, it was so cool. Yep, on your couch while eating pizza rolls, not having anything to worry about. That was the 90s, baby. You just felt like you had all this time, you had all the time in the world. Just relax. Man, you just relax, turn on your PlayStation, play Final Fantasy 9 or whatever on the tube TV. It's dark. You know, the air conditioner's whining. You don't feel like doing homework. You do homework later, or just not do it. You know, do it at first thing in the morning before school. Don't do the dishes. I just want to play Final Fantasy till mom gets home. Get up, get a soda out of the fridge because sodas were cheap. You know, they're still made with corn syrup back then, but yeah. Yeah, I should do a playthrough. There's a new Salem Lot movie. Yeah, I watched some of it, but I didn't watch all of it. So I believe if they changed the ending, it would have a better ending than the book. The book just kind of ends. They just kind of run away from town. That's the book ending. Is them going, oh, guess we can't do anything. Bye. The book does not have a good ending, in my opinion. I think Stephen King was like, I don't know where to go from here. I'm going to just have the characters run away. The end. They lost. The end. Which is cool in one way. In one way, it's kind of cool, but it's not very satisfying. So I will watch the rest of it. I watched the beginning of it, and the acting and the dialogue was not very good. It was just, everything felt awkward. There was no chemistry between the actors, and it just seemed like not very thoughtful writing. It was just like first pass writing, like it hadn't been edited. No one had really thought about whether the dialogue was going to work. But I'll watch the whole thing and see. They had a really attractive actress who couldn't act in the first few minutes, and it's cool. I don't know who she is. I'll look her up. She's pretty, though. Let's take a look at it. Who does this? Oh, Mackenzie Lay. Yeah, dude, she's pretty. She has a big smile, like these big blue eyes. I'll find some pictures of her. But she did not have a very good presence when she was acting. All her delivery was pretty flat. What do you want, dog? She wants dinner. Where's my dinner? Bringer of the dinner. Where is my dinner? She has kind of that Irish jawline. I call it Irish. I don't really know. I just see Irish women that have it. It's just like a little bit more defined jawline versus a more gracile continental. It's a good shape, though. Kind of square. Kind of square jaw. But she has those wide set eyes, so it would look weird if she had a really narrow face. A big smile. She got a big smile. She's pretty. Not a lot of stage presence, though. This is a good headshot of her, where you like really emphasize the big lips and kind of de-emphasize the jaw, so that and then kind of tilting the head forward. This is a great headshot. There's a lot of little things you can do with headshots to like really accentuate the features you want to accentuate. So like this one really accents her eyes and her lips. And notice that you have almost an overexposure on the face so that the details of the nose are almost hidden. She has a great nose, but you're wanting to reduce the amount of lines to make her look as young as possible. Whereas this, with her head tilted up, you can see more details of her nose. She looks slightly older here because you can see the kind of the lower eyelid here. This is just natural. I think she's still really beautiful, but for a headshot, you're wanting like youth, beauty. Oh, that's a very revealing dress. But like her delivery was just very flat. That's what I'll say about it. How many hours do you play games per day? Probably 30 minutes. not even 1 hour if I'm getting any time in. A lot of times I got to skip that and just read a little bit before bed because I'm so busy. Quake 3 Arena. Dude, that was intense. Bunny hopping everywhere and like bullets. Oh, Quake 3 was crazy. And Unreal Tournament, the original Unreal Tournament where you had like the low gravity levels and stuff. That was so cool. Marathon, you could have custom physics engines too, where you could have like low gravity. I've heard that the biggest... Okay, Jedi Knight was a mediocre FPS by PC standards. I don't think it was mediocre by PC standards. I thought it was really good. The Jedi Knight games had a much better story than the Disney movies. Stephen King hates all the movies, so I think more accurate is better. Well, Kubrick made The Shining better, in my opinion. Yeah, I might agree with that. I think The Shining is too long as a book. It's just too long. That's, Have you seen the 1979 miniseries? I have not. Junji Ito's Uzumaki. I saw that, but I haven't watched it. Yes, I'm familiar with it. I haven't watched that anime adaptation yet. If you think it's cool, I'll watch it. I'll try to watch it. I like Jedi Knight, but the multiplayer wasn't great. Had fun with it though. I thought it was a lot of fun with the Force powers and stuff. It just was wild. It was just really different for the time. I'd have to go back and do it again to see if it like holds up. Everything now is about balance, and back then it just wasn't. You could do crazy stuff and get away with it. I'm realizing I'm running out of time for today's show. Yeah, check out LF1. Why not? Here, let me show you it. Right. Open source marathon. The original marathon. The good one. Right. They even have like high resolution texture packs and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. It has a really good... There's music in the first one, and they got rid of music. There's like no music in Marathon 2. They're like, well, we wanted ambient sounds. And they're there, but it's just weird without music. I don't know. I'm too used to like video game music. There's like no music. Marathon Infinity works without the music though, because it's so creepy at times. Like, this doesn't reflect what Marathon Infinity is like. Marathon Infinity has a really creepy... There's an iOS? What? You could play this on your iPhone. That's rad. It had some really confusing levels, though. There's levels they're just like a labyrinth. Kind of like some of the original Doom and Doom 2 levels. Like, you're like, where am I going? I don't remember where this door was. What did that switch do? Oh yeah, there was an Xbox Live Arcade remake of Marathon 2. And Marathon 2 was very bright. It was a very bright game. The original Marathon was really dark. I like the original Marathon more than Marathon 2, but Marathon 2's gameplay is good and probably has better level design. It's just the atmosphere of Marathon 1 is better. Marathon Infinity has the best atmosphere of all three, in my opinion. They're good. The non-intuitive level design, that's one way of putting it. I liked the original Dark Forces level design too. These were huge. Like, you felt like you were really in a gigantic spaceship because of how big the levels were. They were massive. The levels were so big in those Dark Forces games. Just gigantic. I remember getting lost in them, And there was also times where, like, there were some really annoying ones where, like, you'd have to jump. You'd have to do like a platforming section and jump on like a moving platform. And then if you missed it, you'd have to like spend 10 minutes walking all the way back around to the ledge to like miss the jump again. The Marathon games have been added to Steam for free. Let's check this out. What? You're right. Classic Marathon. Oh man, it has like the original UI and stuff too. This is what it was like. You had this UI that filled up like half your screen. I used to use like a mod to get rid of it, so it would look more like this. But yeah, you had this craziness. So like this way you could only render stuff in like 320 by 240 or something. So yeah, maybe you could just grab it on Steam. Oh yeah. It was like add to library. Okay. Classic Marathon. Let's see what else. Classic Marathon Infinity. Classic Marathon 2. Add to library. These are great games. Marathon 2, yeah, you can see how much more they were rendering. The original Marathon, it was like you could only play it on Macintosh, and they didn't even have PowerPC Macintoshes at the time. So you were running like on the same processor that a Sega Genesis ran on, and rendering all of this stuff, which is crazy. You got some good screenshots. Marathon Infinity had like such like dark design. I feel like it doesn't translate that well. Like I think you have to play it on an old school monitor to really get the vibe. But it's okay. It's probably a good like modern version of the game to play. Very positive. What do people say about it? My favorite Marathon game. Oh yeah, there was like total game remakes that I had where you could do. People would because Marathon Infinity included all of the development tools, so you could just make your own games with the Marathon engine if you bought Marathon Infinity. People did it and like distributed free entire FPS games they made with it, with new graphics and new monsters that did new things because you could edit the behavior of all the enemies and the physics. Like the game was just super customizable in that way. Word on Uzumaki is that only the first episode is good. Another studio botched the second. Oh man. Later FPS games streamline level design too much. Like JK2 felt too linear. Jedi Knight 2. Oh, Jedi Knight was like the random vent in an obscure corner is actually the way to go. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. That's cool. Let's see here. We have classic. Now Marathon Infinity had like some branching storylines too, which is pretty cool. I think I have Marathon installed elsewhere, but we'll try the Steam version. Classic Marathon 2. Let's install that baby. It's 34 megabytes. Here you go. XBLA graphics pack. Probably looks better. I'd have to look up like what's the best like graphics upgrade that they do for this. Like this is the Xbox Live one, I guess. I think it looks okay. Looks a lot like what I remember. These weird like alien ship levels. That's cool stuff. All right. I think that's about it for today. Oh, thank you for the super chat, Sound Engraver. Thank you for the great stream. I appreciate it. Thanks for hanging out with me. Dude, I remember Descent. Yes, Descent. Those were cool. A lot of cool games a lot of PC games from the 90s have kind of disappeared the way console games haven't. I feel like there's less preservation of 90s PC games. You can play Marathon 2 for free. You could play MechWarrior 2 Mercenaries. Good games. But there just hasn't been as much like attempt to bring them into the modern sphere versus like console games. I feel like console games have actually held up better overall. Other than like Doom, there's always someone porting Doom to everything. Doom 2, Quake. Really classic games. All right, so I think that's it. I'm gonna go eat some dinner. I appreciate everybody joining me for the day. I'll be back on Friday. I missed this one Friday because I was in a camp out for more Live Write, which has been a lot of fun. We're hoping this year to finish up that story and publish it. So we'll have 2 books written live on the air. Pretty cool. This one's a lot longer. I have some crazy stuff in store for like this weird Fey realm that the characters are in. It'll be pretty fun. I'm really looking forward to it, and then writing the climax. All right, that's it, folks. I appreciate it. Let me link all the other stuff. Patreon, that's where you get the copies of the free books. Free book every month, plus keys to prolific creativity. The Substack, articles every month, articles every week. There it is. Okay. All right, that's it. Have a great one, and I will see you all next time.